Welcome to Jill Pearson Profiles. I'm your host, Jill Pearson. I am delighted to welcome back today the new District Attorney of Middlesex County, Marian Ryan. Ms. Ryan was General Counsel at the DA's office, and she was Chief of their Elder and Disabled Unit. And she has for many years led the efforts of the DA's office in its community initiatives and public and private partnerships, such as the Workplace Safety Program. She also teaches criminal law and constitutional law at LaSalle College. She has 2 children with her husband, who's an economist. So, Marian, thanks so much for coming back to do a second show with us.
Oh, happy to. Thanks for having me.
And today we'll be talking about some issues that you have a lot of insight into, and that is elder abuse and fraud.
Elder abuse, really, the cases that come to us take various forms. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, and financial abuse. And unlike, unfortunately, what many people may think, particularly with respect to financial abuse, and also physical abuse, it very often the perpetrators are either family members or people known to the elder. In terms of financial abuse, probably the single biggest way that people lose a lot of their assets is through the use of a joint bank account. People will, as they get older, perhaps their spouse has died or they're alone, and they want to be sure that somebody else is going to have access to their money if they need it. So they will open a joint bank account with an adult child, a niece, a nephew, granddaughter, whatever. And often what people don't understand is that when you do that, that money in the account, even if it's totally a senior citizen taking their money and putting it in and putting, for instance, an adult child on the account, that money legally belongs equally to both of them. And that if that person who's the other co-signer on the account were to empty out that account or take a large amount of money out of that account, they legally can't be prosecuted because you can't be prosecuted for taking your own money.
They legally can take all of the money.
Right. And you can't be prosecuted for taking your own property. Mm-hmm. So and a joint bank account doesn't carry with it any requirement, as unfortunately many people think, that if I put my, for instance, adult child on as a co-signer, they can only use the money for my benefit. That the joint bank account doesn't carry any requirement like that. It's the same as, for instance, you have a husband and wife who are married. The wife doesn't work, the husband works, the money goes into a joint bank account. They can both access that, they can both spend it. The account doesn't become, a normal joint bank account doesn't become different just because one of the people on that account is a senior citizen. So unfortunately, we get hundreds of cases every year where people have lost amazing amounts of money to somebody who they trusted, obviously, enough to put on as a joint signer on the account, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about prosecuting those cases.
That's terrible.
It's terrible.
So what should those people do instead of setting up a joint bank account?
Well, there's a couple of things they can do. One of which is they can, and you need an attorney to do this, which is often why people take the less expensive route of setting up a joint bank account. They could go to an attorney and draw up enough documents to really separate out what the account's going to be for, open up different other kinds of things, separate out people's access to their money. Or, as I say to people often, if you really just want to do that, then put money in there that you could afford to lose. You know, sometimes somebody will say, I'm going to winter in Florida. I want my cousin to be able to pay the light bill, the water bill, whatever it is. Well, that account then doesn't need to have the proceeds from the sale of your house and your late husband's life insurance and all of that in there. If the bills are going to be $3,000, put $5,000 in that account. Unfortunately, if something goes wrong and you lose that money, you've only lost $5,000. And again, as I've said before, I mean, one of the issues is that a number of people who are senior citizens do have access to a lot of money. I mean, they've sold a home that they maybe paid a very modest price for. It's now got a very high price on the market for it. Perhaps they've lost a spouse or a sibling and they've collected some insurance proceeds. So people often have a lot of money sitting in those joint bank accounts.
So they either ought to go to a lawyer and have some documents drawn up that will say what the purpose of the money is and what rights the other person has to that money.
And what kind of an account they want to really open up. I mean, there are other things you can do. You can put your money in trust. You can do a lot of different things to accomplish where you want to be. But a joint bank account is not the vehicle for carrying out those wishes.
It's something easy to do because you just walk into the bank and say, put this person on my account. But that is a bad idea.
Well,
unless it's just a limited amount of money.
Right. I mean, the problem is nobody anticipates, it's the same thing as you don't anticipate getting divorced when you get married. Nobody anticipates when they open that account that the person they're putting on is going to become untrustworthy.
Right.
Time passes, people have bad marriages, they have substance abuse issues, they lose their job, all of that. Probably the person who was put on didn't intend to take it at the time they got on, but life changes, and often it's, well, I'm just going to take a couple of thousand, I'll put it back, and that just doesn't happen. And suddenly the elder, very often, will have an elder who gets a notice from the bank that their $15 check couldn't be cashed because their account is emptied, and they can't imagine because they had so much money, and they go to the bank and find out the account's empty.
That must be horrifying.
It's terrible. It's worse when we have to then explain there's nothing we can do to recoup that money.
And as you say, the people that they trust probably start out feeling trustworthy, but there may be financial pressures on them from the bad economy. They may have lost a job. They may have children that need to go to college, and they're in that sandwich generation they talk about between the elderly parents and the children growing up.
Right.
So you never know what the pressures are. That
and sometimes there are other people too as well who from the beginning take advantage.
Yes.
They have a substance issue, they have whatever, that's an easy way, especially to access with a bank card, to start accessing a lot of money.
So it's like good fences make good neighbors. Setting up an account properly in the beginning will keep good relations within the family.
Right.
Okay. And tell us about the telephone scams that you've seen committed on the elderly.
The telephone scams are another way that people really take lots and lots of money, not just from elders, but very often from elders. And again, that we have very little opportunity to ever recoup. One of the most popular, if you will, and really most devastating is the lottery scam, where people get a phone call and the call says, congratulations, you've won the Irish lottery, and you have won a prize of $15 million. And in order to get your $15 million, you just have to pay the taxes up front. And so send $3,000 to this post office box. And people are excited, they think this is great, all of that, they send the money off. Needless to say, the $15 million doesn't come. And then they start getting more phone calls that say, well, it was $3,000, but guess what, we forgot, there's this corrupt government in that country that you won the money in or whatever, we need you to send another $1,000. And people do it, and unfortunately, by the time they start to realize that maybe they're losing a lot of money, often they're embarrassed or they don't want to believe they've been taken, so they just keep sending more and more money. People go through hundreds of thousands of dollars, and very often that money is being sent out of the country. We have no way to really track it effectively. We certainly don't have a way usually to track the people who've made those phone calls. They're made from prepaid phones. They're from numbers in countries that we're not finding. And we have only successfully prosecuted one of those cases.
So those scams actually start in other countries?
Very often, yes.
And are they using someone in this country to help them?
Sometimes. The one case that we were able to prosecute, there was somebody in the Midwest who was making the phone calls to people in Middlesex County. People in Middlesex County were mailing packages of money to the person in the Midwest. The person in the Midwest got a certain percentage out of the envelope, and then he sent the money on out of the country.
Actual packages of cash?
Sometimes there's actual packages of cash. That's very often what they will ask for, or a bank check.
Okay, and do they use any other pretexts other than you've won the lottery, or is that the main one?
That's the main one for big pieces of money. There's also the things that probably everybody has seen, and particularly if you use the internet, you get an email that looks like it's from a friend of yours, and it says, I'm really sorry to have to ask you this, but I was traveling in London, my bags were stolen, my passport's stolen, I need to come home. Please send me $500.
I've gotten one of those.
Yeah, everybody's gotten
How do
those.
they do that? Because it comes with my friend's email address.
Right. I don't know mechanically how that works, but they are somehow able to hack into accounts that you will recognize and send those to you. So people send a lot of money, and they're very compelling. I mean, I got one myself where for a moment I thought, oh, I know that person is out of the country. You know, they need $100, and then I rethought that and didn't send them the money. But people send a lot of money to those. There are the sort of more egregious personal calls. Sometimes you get the phone call that says your grandchild, Dan or Tom, we have them. They're called a pigeon drop scam. Go to the park and leave us a certain amount of money, and don't call the police. Often people are afraid to do that. They're afraid to call the police. The callers are very specific. You know, don't call the school to check if they're there. If you do, we will hurt them. So of course, you know, it's your child, your grandchild, whatever. They'll do whatever they're told to do.
So these people actually know the name of the person.
Yes.
How do they know that?
Well, we've never been able to figure that out. I surmise a couple of ways. Sometimes people, in talking with strangers, particularly, you know, proud grandparents, will talk about their grandchild. Very specifically, you know, my little grandson Tommy goes to the Winbrook School or whatever it is, so somebody has that information. Often people who've been the victims of those scams will report that in the weeks leading up to that, they might have gotten a phone call, for instance. You answer the phone, someone says hello, and you don't quite catch what they say. And then they say, oh, you know me, I'm Tom, I'm a friend of your son John. John, my son John, I don't have a son John, I have Tom. Oh, sorry, I meant to say Tom. Yeah. And before you know it, you've given away a lot of information that a clever scammer can then turn around and use and feed back to you. But it's really in hindsight that people remember they had those phone calls, that they might have given out some information.
All right, so people need to be careful. First of all, if they're on the internet and they get one of those emails that says, I'm in a foreign country, and it looks like it's from someone you know, and it says, I've lost my passport, or I lost my plane ticket, and I need you to wire me $100, or how do people wire? They use Western Union.
You go to one of those little money stores or something. Yeah.
Don't do it.
Right.
You should be very suspicious.
Chance that's a scam.
Okay, so don't do that. And then as far as the phone calls that are coming to the home, it seems to me it would be very helpful to not only the elderly, but to every person, to have your landline phone be a phone that has caller ID.
Right.
And then program that phone with the name and number of everyone in your family, all your friends, your plumber, your lawyer, everyone that you ever expect to call you. And if you find it too complicated to do that, then perhaps, you know, a child or grandchild would do it for you.
Right.
That would be a lovely gift to give to an elderly relative or neighbor, and to come in and program the phone for them with every name and number of all the people that they are in contact with, so that, and then the person should know when the phone rings, look to see who it is. If you don't recognize the caller, don't answer it. The worst that will happen is the person will leave a message, and you can listen to the message while it's being left. And if you recognize the person's voice, you can pick it up.
Right.
So there's nothing to be lost by not answering the phone if you don't recognize the caller.
Well, and also part of it is the information that people shouldn't or wouldn't be asking you for. I mean, another frequent way that people end up giving out a lot of information is you get a phone call, the person on the other end says, you know, this is Marian calling from the whatever place you do your banking. We need your social security number. We need whatever. The banks, anybody at a bank will tell you that they will never call you and ask for your social security number.
Right.
You have an account. They have your social security number.
Right.
So if someone's calling to ask for your social security number, it's probably not for a good purpose.
Yes.
And at a minimum, you ought to say, who is this? What's your number? Hang up and call them back.
Right.
And find out they are, in fact, the person who they say they are. I mean, a bank will not be calling to ask your social security number.
Well, nobody should be asking your social security number over the phone, I would think. But that's right. It never hurts if you're not sure the person is who they say they are. If they say they're calling from some official place, it never hurts to say, give me your name and your phone number, and I'll call you back.
Right.
And then you find out if they really are at that place.
Right. Right.
Okay, so.
And not be afraid to, you know, people frequently are afraid to bother the police about those things. If you're getting those kind of phone calls, I mean, especially the lottery scams, those people are just insatiable. They will call hundreds of times a day. If you start getting those phone calls, you need to pick up the phone and call the police station. The police will be happy that you called them. That's what they're there for. They may not be able to stop the phone calls, but they certainly will come out. They'll figure out who's calling. That's really how we track some of these cases, how we get the information about who's getting called. We need you to give that information to the police department.
Okay. So people shouldn't be embarrassed. If they have fallen for this in the first instance or the second instance, you are not the first one.
No, not at all.
And it's only if you report this to your local police that they can try to get any kind of a handle on it and find out who's doing this. And maybe at some point we can stop those rings that are just heartlessly preying on the vulnerable people.
I mean, and what we often, if we find out in a particular community that people are being targeted by these, the local papers are great. They will put a notice in the paper for us. The senior centers will post a notice. So by reporting, you're really helping other people.
Yes.
Because people feel very isolated and they feel like, I'm silly, I'm foolish, I should be able to take care of this. So please don't let that stop you from reporting.
Don't feel foolish. Many, many people have fallen for these things. And we just want to make sure that nobody else does.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. We had a woman who, very accomplished, owner of a business, had very routine banking practices. And she banked at her local bank, knew the people in the bank, and she had very, really modest lifestyle. And one day she started coming in and asking for a lot of money in cash. So the bank teller, a little bit surprised, started to engage her about, are you going on a trip? Are you going in the hut? Like, just wondering why she suddenly needed this large amount of cash. And the woman didn't really give her an answer, but it was a lot of money. And the bank teller, who did an amazing job, just really was suspicious of why she would need this much money. So she convinced the woman that she didn't have that much cash in her drawer just yet, and would she come back in a little bit. And in the meantime, she contacted the police, and the police were there when the woman came back to just really talk to her about what's going on, what are you doing with the money. And the woman ultimately told them that she had been contacted by one of these scams, that she was to send this very large amount of money in an envelope. It was going to be picked up at a UPS truck. So the police were great. They spent a lot of time really tracking down where the address was. It was in California, finding out from the California police that had lots of phone calls about that address. In the end, the woman decided to send the money anyway. I don't think she probably ever got the lottery proceeds, but the bank teller and the police department did a great job. So, but we really can only help people to the extent that people give us that information.
So the police and the DA's office will be grateful to learn if you have received one of these emails or one of these calls. It's useful information for your office to have and for the local police. Okay, so sometimes the people who are preying upon the vulnerable are total strangers.
Yes.
And sometimes they are someone in your family that you trust.
Or a caretaker or something like that. Yeah.
And that must be very difficult to deal with.
It's very hard. It fractures the family very often. And very often people, particularly, for instance, if it's a caretaker, when an elder realizes they're being taken advantage of, they're reluctant to report that. They don't want to burden their children or their family, who often may live out of state, that sort of thing. They're afraid that they'll be seen, perhaps not, maybe you have a failure of your eyesight, and so you have somebody writing checks for you, and they've started writing checks to themselves in very large amounts. People are often just embarrassed to admit that. Because they fear that their family will think that somehow mentally they weren't paying attention when it's really just a physical thing.
Right.
Or maybe everybody has a bad day, everybody forgets things, whatever. Better to say that than wait till your resources are gone, which is what often happens. Very often we only discover the extent of what's happened when someone is in a position where they can no longer handle their own affairs and somebody comes in, whether it's their family or an attorney or something, and discovers that an account that should be full is empty.
Nothing left.
The house has been deeded off to somebody else, whatever.
So just the worst possible scenario of this person is left penniless by this scam.
Right, and very often at the time when their physical or mental decline causes them to need more services. So someone's worked and saved their whole life. They now need, for instance, hospital care or assisted living care or whatever. And when the family steps in, where there should be plenty of resources for that, they're gone. So they're left not only without their resources, but without access to the care, the quality of care they would have had.
Well, I hope that everyone learns about these scams so that no one else will fall for them. Because that's just horrible.
They're horrible.
That's terrible. And so do your victim witness advocates get involved in those cases?
They do. We have a wonderful staff of victim witness advocates who really are very helpful in keeping people up to date in terms of what's going on with their cases, in directing them off to other kinds of services if they need other sorts of services, whether it's elder services and all the range of services they have, Meals on Wheels, house cleaning, check writing. Elder Services offers a program. If you have an eyesight problem and can't, or a physical writing problem, can't do your own checks, they have bonded individuals that work for them that will come out and write checks for you once a month for your bills. So you don't need to be relying on some neighbor to do that.
And how do you get connected to that service?
You just call Elder Services, and they have geographic catchment areas. So depending on what town you live in, you would call a particular elder service. People can certainly call our office. We're happy to find out what town they live in and point them to the right place. The police officer would be able to tell you in your town what elder service agency you go to.
And that's for anyone 60 or older?
60 or older.
And I never realized that all those services were available.
There's a real menu of services
from the state.
Right. And that's the other piece. People very often feel like, and there's a sliding cost to some of them and all of that, but you've worked your whole life, you pay taxes, you pay for those services. You should really avail yourself of them, improve the quality of your own life, and also protect your assets.
Okay. So tell us again what those services are, because I'm not sure people know that.
They offer, Elder Services are wonderful resources. They offer a whole host of services. They offer Meals on Wheels, which is probably the thing that people know the most. They can connect you to the visiting nurse. They offer this check writing service that people will come out. They offer help with, if you're needing, home cleaning or repairs, they will hook you up with people that can help you with that sort of thing. They really can help you get whatever you need to live well in, whether you're at home or an assisted living facility or whatever it is.
That's wonderful. I didn't know that.
It's amazing services, and people don't take advantage of it.
So your office works closely with
Very
that
closely
office,
with
with that state
Yes.
office?
Yes.
And what other state offices do you work closely with for purposes like that?
Well, we also work very closely with the Disabled Persons Protection Commission, which is the umbrella agency for people between 18 and 60. So once you're over the age of 60, you go to the Elder Services, wherever that geographic area is. But people who are between the ages of 18 and 60 who suffer from some physical or mental disability, the Disabled Person Protection Commission serves that same sort of function. They can help you find and navigate to get resources that you might need for services.
Well, that's a wonderful thing that I was never aware of.
Yeah, it's an amazing, there are services out there, and so many people suffer needlessly or are taken advantage of because they try to cobble together relying on a neighbor or a friend or something who turns out not to be trustworthy.
So people can find these services, can they link from your website?
Yes, yes.
Or
they can call our office, our main numbers on the website, and we have a staff of victim witness advocates that will be happy to point them in the right direction.
And we'll put your website up over this show
Sure.
so that people will have it at hand.
Sure.
So that's a wonderful thing. I had no idea those resources were
we
available.
have a very healthy program in both of those areas.
And tell us what other areas you reach out to the community in.
We do a lot of work for children, obviously, children, both young children and children in the schools. We also have a very good initiative in terms of workplace safety and respect, where we take a very broad view of workplaces and talk to people both about the dangers they face from people outside and from people within the workplace. We do a lot of outreach to the colleges and universities. There are 26 colleges and universities within Middlesex County, which obviously each one of those is really sort of a small town with the population turning over every 1/4 every year. So, and a lot of young kids coming to a new setting in an age where there's probably a lot of experimentation going on in different areas. So we do a lot of training, a lot of work with those campuses.
Who are you training at the campuses?
We do pretty much everyone. We do a lot of work with the students themselves. A lot of our advocates and our DAs will go out a couple of times a year, particularly at the beginning of school, to talk to students about safety, about drug use, about internet safety, things like that. Then we have a pretty comprehensive training program where we do college staff, employees, RAs, anybody who's going to be interacting with the students in terms of, should they get a report of a sexual assault? Should they suspect some mental health issues? Those kinds of things, to give them the tools to effectively deal with that.
So you would train the people who are working at the university what to do, say, if someone reported a rape?
Yes, yes. Or they suspect a mental health issue, that sort of thing. How to document that, how to reach out, what kind of services they might utilize.
A very good thing to do. And tell us a little bit more about the workplace safety program.
Our workplace safety program we've presented in a number of different venues, both public institutions like some of the colleges and schools. We've done it with a number of private industries. We've done it with a lot of hospitals. We do a lot of work with Mass Nurses Association and hospitals. And it really focuses on the kinds of things that can happen in a workplace from a variety of different angles. There are, number one, the people who come into your facility, your workplace, whatever it is. So you might have, if you're at a school, there's interaction, there has to be interaction between the staff at the school and parents and vendors and outside professionals who might come to the school. So they could face not danger necessarily, but unpleasant interactions, stressful situations, those kind of things. We talk to people about recognizing those, documenting those, how to diffuse some of those situations. You have some workplaces where people may come intending to do a crime. A convenience store, for instance, that's a workplace. You may have someone come in with a gun to rob that store, obviously a danger.
What do you tell them to do?
Well, that's probably the easiest to deal with. People usually know how to respond to that. They're pretty clear. But we talk about some of the safety precautions people ought to be taking to prevent that. When, the whole sort of when people feel like something is not going right, they're uncomfortable, call the police. There's the interaction between employees. Employees who just never seem to get along. It's escalated, it's verbal, it's physical. That's a problem. And then there are the domestic situations that follow an employee to work. So an employee who's got a bad relationship with a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, and comes to work, gets along great at work, everything is good at work, but that rejected friend, boyfriend, whatever, may follow them to work, put that person in jeopardy at work, as well as some of their employees who may come to their assistance.
We've certainly seen that happen.
We've seen that happen very, very often across the country.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how do you train these people to deal with that?
We talk to companies about some of the same things, both having in place policies and procedures that are appropriate for their workplace, about who gets access to people, how do you get in, when do we buzz people in, that sort of thing. And then also recognizing signs that something's going on and being available, accessing that employee and taking some preventative steps.
So to have the policies clearly in place so
Right.
that everybody knows them, and to notice what's going on and to communicate what's going on.
Right.
Well, I've learned a lot today, and thank you so much for coming back
Thank
to
you
do
for
this
having me.
show. And I hope that this will prevent some crimes from happening.
That's our goal.
Yes, it is. And I hope that you will come back and do more shows with us.
I'd be happy to do that.
As there are more things that you want the public to know about, and we would be happy to have you back.
Thank you.
So we've been talking today with Marian Ryan, the new district attorney of Middlesex County. And thank you so much, Marian, for being here. And thanks to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.